What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the United Devils YouTube channel. My name is Arion, and I am back today with a season review. It's a little bit bittersweet because obviously, I think as United fans, we all had hopes for perhaps some silverware to finish off this season, this surprisingly good finish to the Premier League season, but it wasn't meant to be. United ended up coming third in the Premier League and bowing out of three semi-finals in all of the cup competitions that they took part in. So I guess if you look at it lightheartedly and only searching for the positives, I think there's a lot of them to take from this season. But I think it's just once you get to the semi-finals of all those competitions, you do wish that you go on to lift the trophy to maybe get some validation for all of the work that's been put in. And I think it would have been good, particularly for Solskjaer, who has had the most critics, the most questions asked of his credentials to be in the position that he is as the manager of Manchester United. And I think it would have been great for him to be able to lift some silverware and get that reassurance within himself that he's on the right track, that he is doing something right with this football club, which he is. And there's absolutely no doubts and no questions about that. The progress from since he took over to where we are right now as a whole football club, it's incomparable. Um, the whole aura and atmosphere around the football club since Jose Mourinho left to the present day, going into a new season, it's night and day. And even though right now there's a little bit of, I don't want to say a cloud around the club because there hasn't been any transfer yet, where I think it's quite obvious that they are needed. I think maybe that's just put a little bit of a cloud over everything that United has achieved over the last season. But I do think that we also have to be patient as fans, as media, that this club just, we've gotten used to it over the past few years that they don't do things quickly. They like to negotiate, they like to try and get the best deals out of every transfer that they make, even though more often than not that doesn't happen. But I do think it's just a long run, it's just a long game. And I do believe that with Solskjaer achieving what he achieved this season, he will get the backing because I don't think there has been a manager in the post-Sir Alex Ferguson era who managed to squeeze so much out of so little. Because for large chunks of this season, this club, this squad was surplus to requirements. I think the only time United were at full strength was in the first two games of the Premier League season. After that, Paul Pogba went down with an injury. And then other injuries started to happen. Scott McTominay was out for a period. Marcus Rashford obviously got injured around January. Anthony Martial was injured for periods of time. So there was never really a moment where this team got to play for an extended period of time in a way that Solskjaer would have wanted them to. Until Bruno Fernandes and Paul Pogba returned together after the lockdown. That's when we really started to see the glimpses of what this team can achieve under Solskjaer, even with just what's there right now, which is a squad that's pretty solid when it comes to, on paper, the first 11. But once you go into the player 12, 13, 14, and all the way to the end of the bench, it's just not quite there yet. And I think that's what came out down the stretch, where Solskjaer, one, wasn't able to rotate, and two, he didn't really want to, because he just didn't trust for there to be anyone on that bench or within that squad to be able to come in and replace the likes of Greenwood, Martial, Rashford, Pogba, Bruno, the five key players in United's run-in, and offer something. And that's where the problem lays ahead of next season. United need to invest, and Jadon Sancho has been the one that's been talked about, the big money signing, the 120 million euro right winger who would fit United like a glove. This system would be perfect for him to just slot into, and even help Mason Greenwood, who has been starting week in, week out, pretty much ever since lockdown ended. So I think, looking at the high profile of a signing, it is needed, but I don't think it's desperately needed. I think what's desperately needed is just improvement in depth. United needs strength in depth. They need quality on that bench. And when you compare United to, just say, Manchester City, who probably have the blueprint of how deep a winning team should be, They can start Sergio Aguero, Raheem Sterling, and Kevin De Bruyne, and they can have Riyad Mahrez, Bernardo Silva, and Gabriel Jesus coming off the bench. Now that's a perk, that's an advantage over other clubs that United does not have. Certainly not right now, and it was glaring at moments in those two semi-final in the quarterfinal and semi-final of the Europa League. The game was crying out for a change, even to just bring on some fresh legs, but just Solskjaer just wasn't able to do it for whatever reason. He just didn't feel within himself that a substitution was going to do anything to a game, and that's not right for a club of Manchester United's stature and for a club with those kind of expectations. The manager has to have players available at his disposal to bring on at any time. Even if you need to hook a player after 30 minutes, he has to feel confident that whoever's coming on is worthy of playing for United and can make a difference, because you need game changers at every level. You need game changing starters and you need game changers to come off the bench. And I think that's the next step in the development. And backing. Solskjaer just needs backing, because I don't think anybody expected United to reach 3 semi-finals and finish third in the Premier League. And a lot of credit for that has to go to Solskjaer. And this isn't me saying that this season was fantastic and it was a success, because even though our expectations as Manchester United fans have undeniably dropped since Sir Alex Ferguson retired, because when you go on for such a long period without winning the Premier League or the Champions League, it's only natural that your expectations will alter a little bit, because you try to be realistic as a supporter. Even though we're always going to be biased, and before every season we're always going to feel like United will challenge for the league, it's not always going to happen. And it hasn't been happening. United haven't been, even when they finished second, it wasn't a title race. And I think in due course, naturally, expectations just alter a little bit, and you begin to get enjoyment out of smaller things, because it's just a natural progression. Winning has to be built up again. It's like when it comes to a squad of players, you can't bypass instilling that winning mentality. There is no shortcuts. You breed winners by winning. And it's the same with fans. Fans' expectations rise the more a club wins. It's like under Sir Alex, for a lot of fans, winning just kind of felt like it's normal. United won 3 Premier Leagues in a row, and I don't think there was obviously celebrations, but there was never that kind of elation, parades, It just felt like that's what this club does. Right now, whenever United do win the Premier League next, United faithful is going to go crazy. And this is not to say that if they win just one, the expectations will go back to where they were, because they shouldn't. It needs to be success over an extended period of time before the club goes back anywhere near where it used to be. And it's a rebuild, and it's a rebuild that requires patience and investment. And right now, patience is something that the fans are starting to buy into. I think seeing how this team is capable of playing, particularly in the early days post-lockdown when everybody was fresh and there was zip in passes and Bruno and Pogba were starting to link up. Anthony Martial was in great form, finishing in front of goal. Mason Greenwood was contributing. The defence was very solid and compact. I think we saw just how this United team wants to play under Solskjaer. We saw his philosophy right there on the pitch. And it was there for us to buy into as fans. But when players started getting tired, and Solskjaer didn't have many options of players that he felt could come on or could come into this side and carry out his philosophy, because essentially Solskjaer wants to see himself on that pitch. He wants to see his brain and how he sees football played by those players. So if he feels that players on the bench just don't have it in them to play how he wants to play, he's just not going to put them on. And as players started to get tired, even though there was it had 6 days to rest between the quarterfinal of the Europa League against Copenhagen to the semi-final against Sevilla, and it didn't really make a difference. They got jaded near the end. They needed subs desperately, and they just weren't there. And when they did come on, it was too late to make a difference. So I do think the key point of this review is investment, because, as I said before, we've seen glimpses. We know how Solskjaer wants to play. We know that it's effective in the big games, and we saw how effective it can be in the small games, something that United have not been good at ever since Sir Alex retired. That was always the toughest thing. United were somehow, some way, under every manager, able to compete in those big games because it was just an open game. You had to defend and you could counter. But in those small games, teams would barricade and United couldn't break it down. Even though creative players were never not there, they were always there, there were always options, but somehow there's just the patterns of play, the quick, intricate one-touch football, it just wasn't there. And now under Solskjaer, it's come back with the likes of Bruno Fernandes, Paul Pogba, and that front three who can change a game in a click of a finger like that, all three of them. This team has weapons again, but it's not enough weapons. They can put away teams, but sometimes they get tired and they need help, and there's just not enough help there. So investment is crucial. Seeing that this football club, that with no disrespect to any of the players, but had to rely on the likes of Andreas Pereira and Jesse Lingard as their starters, as their sources of creativity going forward for a large chunk of the season, especially until Bruno Fernandes arrived, just shows that Solskjaer did not have a lot of tools to work with for a better half of the season. Only when everybody started getting fit and by miracle Rashford got that lockdown time of 3 months to get back to full fitness, that's when Solskjaer really got his first 11 to play and we really saw what they're capable of. So I think, without being too negative, we see where this club can go, but with investment. I think, like we have been saying on the United Devils podcast and stuff when discussing other teams, you could tell when that Spurs team peaked, when Daniel Levy really stopped investing properly, and that young English core with the likes of Eriksen and Lamela there supporting just kind of reached their peak. You knew they weren't going to go any further unless they really seriously invested. And I think this will be the case for this current United squad if there is no investment, because they reached 3 semi-finals, which is tough. It's difficult to compete on every single front when you don't have a deep squad. And United did that. And credit to them, because I think this was a step. Obviously, losing in 3 semi-finals, it's a failure, and it's a show that there's just not enough winners. There is not enough of that winning mentality in that team to take the team over the line. Even in a semi-final like against Sevilla, where they dominated, there just wasn't enough winners to take the team on their back and bring them over the line. And I think this was just natural progression for this United side, because now they know that they have it in them to compete on all fronts. All of those players that are in the team, whoever leaves or whoever comes, whoever stays from the current squad, they know that they can compete, and they know that they've beaten some good teams in the Premier League as well on the way to finishing third. So what this squad needs right now is just to be strengthened. I think 3 additions, 1 defender, 1 midfielder, and 1 forward would be a perfect transfer window for this team to take that next step. As I said, natural progression. This team went from finishing 6th, 5th, maybe reaching a semi-final, maybe reaching a final and losing, to finishing 3rd, to being able to finish 3rd and comfortably if they didn't drop a lot of points back when the team just wasn't at full strength, and reaching 3 semi-finals, out of which in 2 of them the team was rotated and individual errors pretty much cost more than performances, and in the 3rd the team played fantastically. They created a ton of chances but just couldn't put them away, and again individual errors cost them, which shows you that there are still some weak links in that squad. There are still some players that individually can cost this team at any time. Somebody can put in a good 85-minute shift, but in the last 5 minutes they can cost you a place in the final and the chance of silverware. So I think the natural next step now is to invest, to rest up for this new Premier League season, and to just bring in some fresh blood that can offer something to this squad, because the potential is there. The core, United haven't had this spine that they have right now, which is a very good defender, which is Harry Maguire, who is the club captain, a very good midfield, which now consists of Paul Pogba and Bruno Fernandes, and an Nemanja Matic, who's there as that kind of an anchor, with quite a lot of depth there too, with likes of Fred, McTominay, and even the James Garner, who's probably going to go out on loan. But you know, the centre of the park is safe. It's secure. And then up front, Martial, Greenwood, Rashford, that's a front three for the future. That's a front three that can cause a lot of problems, that has been causing a lot of problems, that scored 60 plus goals between them this season, with Mason Greenwood only playing his first season in senior football. Now that's a lot to build on. This is a foundation that's been laid this season for United to believe, to buy into. This is a foundation that you can build on. This is not a foundation of a team built on big names being brought into the club simply for shirt sales. This is a foundation of a team that Solskjaer architected with his staff on names that fit this football club, that fit the mentality, that can take this football club forward, and that know how to play football as well. He's improved a lot of players individually as a coach with his staff. He's made the likes of Paul Pogba resettle in and maybe commit his future to the club and look happy playing football again. But now another step needs to be taken. As I said, he needs to be backed right now. I think 3 signings would be enough for United to take another step forward. Maybe this doesn't mean that they will challenge for the Premier League next season, but it does mean that those 3 semi-finals might get converted into 1 trophy or maybe 2 trophies. 3 players of quality, not necessarily even starters, but 3 players of quality who can make a difference to this football club could be that game-changing move by this club that would make United go from that semi-final side who just didn't have enough to a side that goes into a final and can't get their hands on a trophy and continue this rebuild. Because let's not forget, this was only Solskjaer's first full season in charge and he needs time. And I think from what he has shown so far, he's shown fans that he deserves time. That he is the first man that has come into this club and genuinely loves it and wants the best for it and knows exactly what he wants to do. He has the blueprint of what kind of transfers he wants. He has an idea of how he wants to play. He has an idea of where he wants this club to be, but he just needs time. And I think we as fans and media and people that cover Manchester United need to give him that time, because he has proved it once again with his transfers that have all been successes and with how United can play when they're at full strength, that he does deserve to be trusted. This is not saying that he will be the man to win United the next treble, but he deserves to be trusted with the rebuild of this football club, because he knows, and this is cliche, but he knows the United DNA. He knows what this club should look like on and off the pitch, and I think he's been doing that a lot. He's deep cleaned this whole football club from the squad, from the dressing room, throughout, and the effects of it are slowly starting to show on the pitch. And I think, again, not to want to sound like a broken record, with investment, this football club can go far, and next season can be very good. But it's critical that Solskjaer gets backed and not ignored like previous managers did when that obvious next step was clear in sight. This next step for this club, for this team, for Solskjaer is clear in sight. He just needs to be helped. And I think between now and September 12th, it's going to be interesting to see if United do buy in, if the board does stop holding out and let Solskjaer do business and let him build the squad that he feels can take United back to where they belong, or at least put them well on their way back to success.